Will the rupee's rise hold for now and beyond? The rupee will erase nearly all the gains it has made against the US dollar in the last 2 months and fall towards an historic low over the next 12 months, according to a Reuters poll of 36 foreign exchange analysts. The rupee has gained about 3% in the last 2 months, ending a 5-month losing streak and also marking its largest monthly gain since November 2018, thanks, of course, to that reversal in foreign capital flows and a weaker dollar. Analysts in that poll, however, told Reuters that the rupee would be held down by slowing economic growth and expectations that the dollar will not weaken much further in coming months, and more on that shortly. The rupee was forecast to drop about 2% to 87 rupees 18 paise per dollar in 3 months and then trade at about 87 rupees 50 paise in 6 months and finally decline to about 87 rupees 80 paise by the end of March 2026. Speaking of the dollar, veteran foreign exchange analyst Jamal Mecklai of Mecklai Financial has argued that the weak dollar will accelerate de-dollarization. De-dollarization is a natural process of stabilization as the dollar's presence in world markets, in forex transactions almost 89%, trade invoicing about 50%, SWIFT payments 42%, international debt securities 42%, cross-border loans about 32%, far exceeds the US economy share of both global GDP, which is less than 25%, and international trade, which is about 12%. The share of the dollar in global central bank foreign currency assets has been falling, actually, is down to about 59% from about 70% in 2001, and it was 85% in 1977, that is. There are several reasons for this, but the important thing is that it is falling. I reached out to Jamal Mecklai and I began by asking him how he was seeing the pace of de-dollarization right now and where the Indian rupee stood in all this.
Like everybody, I have been terrorized, I would say, by Trump. Thinking about it, reading about it, etc., etc. What I think is the good news and also terrible news at the same time is the fact that these guys do not know anything about the market. They do not know that the market is stronger than everybody, right? So they are going full speed ahead. We can talk later. I read an article about something called the Dark Enlightenment. And there are these, sort of philosophers who are talking about democracy is dead. The Chinese model is actually the winner, where people have no rights, but you can build the economy, right? And it really seems like Trump is going in the direction, he doesn't give a shit about people's rights, right? He's saying, I'm going to do this, I'm going to make America the greatest thing in the world. Now, the fundamental difference between China and the US, and there's many great things that China has been doing from what I read, but the fundamental difference is that China has not allowed the market in, whereas the US is as open as you can get. So my concern is that at some point, maybe in the next 6 months or the next 2 years, there's going to be a major, major collapse in the US, right? Simply because these guys, they don't think about the market. Normally, in the old days, Trump would be proud about the equity market going up. It's really collapsing and, hey, no matter. We got to do this, we got to do this, we got to do this, right? Seemingly unaware of the fact that all of the things he's talking about are actually negative for the economy and bad for his constituents, right? But I don't know if you do, but I look every now and again at Fox News. They are triumphant. Like, this is fantastic.
I think the argument there is that this is going to be short-term pain, but long-term gain.
Correct. But my point is the pain is going to be so severe, right? Because the market didn't want to put up with this. The market is the market. It just takes everything and says, all right, bye, I'm going. This is my main concern about what is, happening. Now, the good news, and it doesn't really speak as to what is going to happen to the dollar, although my personal view is the dollar is going down. And this is a sort of a broader picture. The good news is, and India needs to think about how to make it good news, is China. They have been knocking it dead. DeepSeek came out and everyone said, my God, where did that come from? Again, I don't know this from personal experience, but I've read this article which talked about digital renminbi and the amount of the volume of transactions that are flowing through there. See, these guys are not letting up. You all know about the infrastructure there. I saw something on social media, people are able to pay with their palm. I mean, they are way ahead of, even on the UPI type thing. So, to my mind, the saving grace in this whole game is China. Glad we're finally beginning to think of it. We need to actually build a serious relationship there. In any case, we need to. You got this big animal on the side, virtually your biggest trading partner, the biggest trading entity in the world. We're not friends with them, you're a fool. So that's really where frankly, I'm thinking as I'm talking. Because everyone is like, oh, we're in a new world, right? So, in terms of what is going to happen to the dollar, right? It's clearly, as you've seen from those numbers, see, it's unbalanced, right? 25% of the world's economy and, 80%, 90%, 72% of everything else. It can't last forever. So, there's a natural trend for it to be coming down. And Trump, of course, is making it worse because he's told everybody, I don't care who you are. So whatever flexibility anybody has to move away, they got to move away. So my sense is this whole process is going to accelerate. You won't see it. It's not like the reserves are going to go from 59% to 29%, right? But there'll be slow and steady drip, 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 drip. So, and I think most important is that people are, you got a friend and he acts terribly. Oh God, what are you going to do? You start looking around, you find other people, you start working with them more, playing with them more, and then you forget about this guy. He's big and fat and dangerous and violent. And that is, of course, another.
So you've talked about this digital RMB cross-border settlement system, which will be connected to 10 ASEAN countries and 6 Middle Eastern countries. Thus, about 38% of world trade could bypass SWIFT and be settled in RMB. So is that something that's foreseeable? And we're also assuming that the US will not do anything, and all sort of links back to how strong will the dollar stay and for how long?
See, it's not really about dollar strength, right? See, we all think in terms of, reserves and this and that. Ultimately, trade is the play. Okay. And this whole thing with SWIFT, it's so inefficient. The banks get fat on it, right? Some years ago, I was in the US. They gave me a $10 bill and they said, give it back to me. He said, you've been a bank. Basically, the float is where they make money, right? They do other things too, but the float is where they make money. Now, a SWIFT transaction takes 3 days. Even in India, our UPI, we've got a few experiments going with Singapore, Paris, etc., etc. This is all retail, and this is not really anti-dollar because since the currency rates are, even if it's in Paris, you want to go to the Eiffel Tower, you can pay with your GPay. But the fact is the rate goes through the dollar. India's thing is not threatening the dollar yet. China certainly thinks the hell with you. And apparently, a lot of countries, I've got this somewhere, I read it, I have no independent verification, but a huge number of countries are buying into this. And you can imagine if there were 20 buying into it 5 years ago, there would be 120 now. Because everybody knows that you've got to build a second game, which may end up being the main game.
Right. Thank you so much for joining me.